Welcome, everybody, to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Thanks for hanging out with us this great week, having a beer, talking craft beer, finding out the news, conversations, drama, scientific information, and not so scientific information. I am Tim Dennis. Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Tim. How about yourself?
Good, man. Good. How's your week?
Brian looks a little slighted right now.
I've heard of that guy. Brian Hewitt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine now.
Fine. He's like,
I feel injured. I'm doing fine. How are you doing, Tim? I don't even know if I want to ask. I mean, you didn't ask.
I don't even care anymore. I'm over it.
I've moved on with my life.
That's it. Yeah. So no, I'm good, man. I'm doing fine here. So like you said, we were chatting just a minute ago about the blizzard that is supposed to come through Atlanta, like 1, 2, 3 inches of snow. Now, what do you think, guys? Do you think we'll get snow, or do you think it's going to be the typical cold rain and freezing overnight and just mess?
I think the smart money is on a dusting of stuff that settles, and it'll sit for a bit, and then it'll melt, and there may be some ice here and there. Like I haven't really looked at the weather, so I'm basing this off of what I've seen in the past. Like, we're gonna get snow. It's like we may get some big old chunky flurries that look great coming down, but when they hit the ground, it has been really cold here, so maybe they would stick, but I haven't seen it snow and actually stick in this area in, man, how long has it been? Like, seriously, how many
It's been
years?
a while. I think
a decade or more?
I don't think it's been a decade. We had that. We had what for us was a bad blizzard, like a foot of snow. Has that been a decade ago? I don't think quite so.
I think that was like a 2000, wasn't it like a 2015? Didn't we made a beer back when we were homebrewing for that, like the Snowpocalypse,
the Atlantarctica.
Yes, and that's how long it's been. That's been a decade ish.
Crazy.
Ago.
How does that happen? How does a decade fly by so fast?
That was significant. Like, if we had another one of those, like, I guess that's possible. But everything else has always been like, hey, we might get some snow, and like, it collected a little bit in the grassy areas where it didn't melt immediately. But
the label we made for that beer won a homebrew label competition.
Oh, did it?
For Atlantarctica. Did you forget that you did not? It's okay, Brian. We forget things sometimes. I
forget everything. But
it
was a great label. Yeah,
it was. My prediction for the weather is we'll get what they call wintry mix with no accumulation. That's my thinking. So.
But yeah, my prediction is about the same. I mean, my area has still consistently all week been calling for 5 to 6 inches. I really don't expect to actually receive 5 to 6 inches, because when I look at the hourly breakdown, it's like, 0.05 inches, inch by the hour. So I think that amount might fall, but I don't think it'll accumulate to that amount.
Guess we'll see.
What is the actual temperature outside supposed to be? Because usually 34. When it snows, we want it being just like 33, 34. I don't know why it always happens that way, but that seems to be every time. Like, is it going to be sub 30s? Because if it is, then okay, then
no. During the day it comes up, but moving along from Atlanta weather. So
fine.
We've got that. Brian, what are your beers of the week?
I pre-gamed with a Halfway Crooks Ada, which is a German Pilsner. I'm always excited to get my hands on that. It's one of my favorite Halfway Crooks beers. Right now, I am drinking a Sweetwater Exodus Porter, which is a porter made with Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee blend. And I always forget that that's a coffee porter. It's not just a porter; it's a coffee porter. So that's always fun to see come back. And I don't know if it comes back every year around this time, but it seems like that's kind of. Like maybe every just like an annual thing.
I don't think it was back occasional. It's like the McRib.
Yeah, just comes up occasionally.
Sweetwater's McRib.
And later on, if I have time, maybe during our little post-show discussion with Patreon folks, I may get into an other half spinach, which is
spinach.
New England IPA with Citra, Mosaic, Eldorado, and Nelson Sauvin hops, and that'll be great. Looking forward to that.
Okay. Nate, I'm going to go next because we're going to segue you into something when you do your beers of the week. So my beer of the week, I'm having a beer again, guys. I've been off the alcohol for a while due to medication or #doctor's orders, as I say. But today I have from Good Word Brewing a Riding Bikes in Munich, which is a Hella style lager at 4.7%. So enjoying me a little lager action today. And Nate, you're doing the dry January thing, so you got a little bit of NA action there. What is it? What's up for you?
So I pre-gamed with Bitburger's Drive 0.0 Pilsner. I've never had it before, but I like Bitburger, so that was really tasty. And then currently in my glass from Guinness, I'm having their 0.0 Draught.
The 0.0 draft, is that draught? That always
Draught. Yeah,
I thought so. Okay,
I think it's pronounced draft, really, but it looks like
think
draught.
it is.
Yeah,
uncultured.
Well, Nate, speaking of Guinness, we got a little email action from Guinness there talking about dry January and letting you know you could still drink Guinness during dry January. And they actually sent us a mocktail recipe using Guinness 0.0. What is up with that?
Yeah, so Guinness wants to get in on the dry January action, both in their offering, but they also, with this recipe, this cafe au I don't know.
Cafe all chai mocktail.
Cafe
chai,
yes,
mocktail there. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So the build for it is 2 ounces of Guinness 0, an ounce and a half of Seedlip Spice 94. Which Seedlip is it's basically a distilled water with botanicals added to it, but when the water is vaporized, they brush it through the botanicals, and so you get a lot of the botanical flavor, but none of like the tannins or anything crazy, like an actual steeping process. And so an ounce and a half of Seedlip Spice 94, half an ounce Seedlip Grove 42, 1 ounce of Grady's cold brew, 3/4 ounce simple syrup, and then 1 ounce Tezo chai latte. And then you're gonna combine all the ingredients into a shaker with ice. You're going to stir it, with ice, stir, shake, and strain. So you probably could just get away with just shaking it instead of also stirring it. But yeah, strain it over a frozen glass and garnish with espresso beans.
I was going to ask you about that. I saw that it had the instructions had both stir it and then shake it. So get it cold and then aerate it a bit. Is that the idea? Or they want extra dilution from the ice? Or I have no idea.
It might be a typo. I probably would just shake it. There's no need to. If you want to, give your wrist a little workout, then go ahead and do the stir and the shake. But yeah, definitely strain the liquid out of the ice and then just pour it into a frozen glass.
Now, Nate, I know you've done basically an espresso martini, I think with just regular Guinness, right? Have you tried this concoction yet?
So I haven't. I don't have Seedlip in my house right now. The rest of it, if you can find Seedlip, it's pretty freely distributed. At least I know here in Georgia, you can find it pretty easily. The rest of the stuff you don't have to do Grady's cold brew. And then the Tazo chai, I think, is sold in most every grocery store. So I haven't tried it yet, but I'm definitely willing to give it a shot.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds tasty. A chai espresso martini, essentially, is what we're looking at there. So, okay. All right. Well, thanks there again, you can support beer and still do your dry January. Go out to your local brewery, see what they've got on the mocktail menu, grab a bite to eat, continue to show them love. They definitely need it. So Brian, moving on to the news here, but some big news, a lot of health related news the last week. Yeah. And I think the big one is they're apparently talking about putting warning labels on beer.
Yeah. So it's interesting. The U.S. Surgeon General has issued an advisory calling for a warning about the risk of cancer to be included on not just beer, but all alcoholic beverages, but definitely including beer. He says there's conclusive evidence of a cancer risk from alcohol consumption, and it's important to inform the public about the risk by way of warning labels. Reportedly, alcohol is the third leading preventable cause of cancer in the country after tobacco and obesity. So that's preventable. And I'm not, there wasn't like a reference to a study that says that. So I'm just taking what they're saying as fact. He claims that the majority of Americans are unaware of the risk of cancer, but here's the thing. By law, alcohol labels are required. They already have warnings on them. They're required to state that women who are pregnant should not drink alcohol. Alcoholic beverages may impair your ability to drive and operate machinery, and it may cause health problems. So there's already a warning about health problems on beer labels. Go look at your beer or alcohol. It'll say that on there. Additionally, I'm skeptical about the claim that most Americans are unaware of the risk here. It's not clear that that claim is tied to any actual legitimate study, or if it's just the feeling the Surgeon General has because, it's like, oh yeah, I don't think people know this. I'm like, yeah, but don't they? Because alcohol consumption is down, at least in part because people are hyper aware of health issues about everything these days, specifically alcohol. Gen Z is already basically terrified of alcohol and carbonation, and they're terrified of having a good time after 9 p.m. So I'm editorializing a little here, but I wouldn't have an issue with updating the existing warning labels to say that alcohol may cause health problems, including cancer. That's fine. But the Surgeon General is also pushing for labeling to be larger and more prominent on packaging, which means screwing with label designs, which will annoy customers like me and cost breweries money to relabel everything. I mean, seriously, do we need to put a picture of a tumor on everything that's bad for us? Could we put a warning label on the Surgeon General stating that he may cause anxiety and financial injury? That seems only fair at this point. So that's my editorializing on it. So what do you think, Tim?
Well, overboard? No, I think the thing is, we were chatting about this earlier with our Patreon folks on Discord and talking about how many things they go back and forth on healthy, dangerous, this and that. Alcohol, we know excessive alcohol consumption can cause issues. I don't think there's anybody that drinks, at least not in America or the modern world, that doesn't know that. And it's not like, we go back to prohibition. We know the issues that were there. And you know what? Pseudo related, to put it here. This is something on our local beer forum, Reddit ATL Beer. We're featuring breweries that have closed on there. So each day we feature a new brewery. Today we featured the Atlanta Steam Brewery, which was around in the 1870s. And an article from the Weekly Atlanta Intelligencer on April 26, 1871. Now, the writing style of of then, but they're talking about the Atlanta Steam Brewery's malt liquors, which the popularity has grown in the last 20 years. And they said that they are countenanced by the medical fraternity and moral in their effects. So, back then they did talk it up as being, they talk about it being healthful and all of this stuff. So there was a time when they did, but that's long behind us. We know there are risks. And Brian, I know you've got some more information on this, but we want to thank Dave on our in the Discord chat, our Patreon Discord chat, who shared an article today right on the heels of this one talking about the risk, stating that there is benefits to moderate drinking.
Yes, and before I get into that, doctors also used to recommend certain brands of cigarettes too.
They did.
Is amusing to me.
A doctor will smoke right. He'll sit there.
Chesterfields, they're great for you.
Yeah, even Fred and Barney smoke cigarettes.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
But yeah, from Dave on Patreon, a panel of health experts tasked with studying the alcohol consumption for the U.S. dietary guidelines has found with, quote, moderate certainty that people who drink alcohol in moderation have lower all-cause mortality than those who don't drink. The report provides a strong argument that the current guidelines should remain in place despite the growing chorus that we've seen of anti-alcohol activists that saying that no level of alcohol drinking is safe. Now, I got to say, this was from the Wine Spectator, so they have a particular bias.
They got a little skin in this game, a little wine skins in this game.
A little wine skin in this game. The panel did find that moderate consumption of alcohol is associated with a higher risk of breast cancer, but they also found no conclusion could be drawn between a link between moderate consumption and several other types of cancers, including colorectal, pharyngeal. I don't know how to say that. Pharyngeal and esophageal. No one's throat. I don't know what the other one is. Those cancers. There's no definitive link between those, but breast cancer, that seems likely. But they're looking at correlations here. So the dietary guidelines are published every 5 years by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Health and Human Services. So they're doing it now, and I guess we'll see it again in 2030, I suppose, is when they'll do the next one. So we'll see how it goes.
I tell you. Yeah, I think, the best advice to anyone is be smart,
Yeah.
If you want to have a couple beers, have a couple beers. You know what? Have a salad too. They need to put warning labels on Big Macs.
Yeah.
If all you're eating is this, you're doing it wrong, basically. So who knows, man? I want to be safe, but I don't want to be militant about it. I know some of the things I do are not good for me. So
I want to be safe. I don't want to be bubble wrapped. That's my thing.
Sure.
That's what I'm talking about. Don't put me in a shipping container.
I'm an adult. I'm a grown adult man, Brian, and I can make my own decisions. I want to know the risk that I'm getting into, and I do. I think. Who knows?
As much as anybody can know.
It will always go back and forth, it being terrible and horrible for us, and maybe it's okay if we have a little bit.
What you said is basically echoes what I think the Brewers Association and forget who else made a comment on a Beer Institute or something like that, saying their comments on the other article with the Surgeon General's, his comments, his advisory was like, we always advise people to drink responsibly and, not to overdo it. And that's their entire statement. Like, yeah, because we know, we get what this is.
Sure.
And everybody gets what this is. And everybody's saying, hey, don't be crazy, drink responsibly. Don't get yourself into a bad spot, consider your health and cut back if you need to,
right.
Be aware, that's it.
It's likely if you're listening to this show, there's been a time or two in your life when you didn't drink responsibly. And, not the smartest thing to do, but I've done it. I will say that it's been a long time for me. Finally, I did finally grow up like 5 years ago. So, it took a while, but we got there and I am much more responsible with it now. But you know what? I had some good times, man, out with friends and just having beers, bottle shares, beer fest, different things like that. Or, Saturday with the fellas brewing at the house and have overindulged. I knew it was not a great thing to do, but I was there. It reminds me too, Brian, when I was a cigar smoker, really into cigars, and there was a lot of talk about there's this company called Acid that makes infused cigars, flavored cigars, and a couple of others that do them as well. And there was a big talk about these flavored cigars, especially ones that they had some that were like strawberry mint or things like that. I think Tatiana was the brand that did some of these more fruity, different things like that. But they were talking about and moving ahead of flavored cigars like the vapes and that. They talk about how the flavors appeal to children and that's we need to ban these because this is going to children. But then you go to a liquor store and there's a vodka lined up that's got bubble gum, candy corn, I mean, just all these flavors. So, and I didn't hear a lot of Raising Cane over the bubble gum flavored vodka, but they were all on that. So it's a picking and choosing thing. And you know what? Yeah, we'll move on here. We'll quit rambling. But
at one point,
be smart, folks.
What you were saying about those flavors, while I didn't hear anything about it in the liquor industry, there was a period of time where people were within beer were saying, hey, you guys need to knock it off with all of these like cartoony beer labels, because some of the things that they were doing was like, you're going to get in trouble because the federal government's going to see that and say it's appealing to children, and then they're going to crack down on you. And so there was within, I think the industry within itself started policing people a little bit, saying, knock it off. Do not bring that kind of, bad attention to us from the government,
I believe it was the state of Texas made Founders take the kid eating the bowl of oatmeal off of the label of their breakfast stout. So,
and it's still on there, or was still on there in every other state. I don't know if they finally did change it or not.
But they did have a place where they did have I believe it was Texas. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was Texas. They made them take the oatmeal eating kid off of the label there. So it didn't. I don't think that label, even with the kid on there, he was a little creepy looking. I don't think that would appealed to children, but whatever there.
They took the Mountie off of the CBS too. They did. They were just removing the people off of their bottles.
We actually got a chance to chat with the brewmaster there, Jeremy Kosmicki, about the Mountie. And he's like, yeah, they asked us that. And he's like, I told him I was sorry. Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, quality.
Good stuff. Well, Brian, something media likes to do, not us media, like other media, but they like to take something that's been a trend or has been being done for a long time and then write an article about it and coin a phrase to go with it. And this week's phrase, Brian, the flavor of the day is zebra striping, which they claim is a new trend in drinking.
Have you ever heard of this before this week, Tim?
The phrase?
Yeah, zebra striping. That's just a phrase, just the word, the term.
I without being a spoiler to your information, I will say I have not heard the phrase before.
The phrase, okay.
Before you shared the article.
Yeah, I hadn't either. So this week I learned that I have been zebra striping myself for decades. And what is zebra striping? It's a new term made by somebody for the practice of alternating alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks within a drinking session. And the term seems to be catching on everywhere, or so the article I read says. While nobody knows for certain, it seems that the term zebra striping originated in the UK, but the alternating of drinks is something that has been going on for much, much longer than that, and probably all over the world. I'm pretty sure that's true. I actually picked up on the concept from a buddy of mine back when I was hitting bars in my 20s. Executed correctly, I found that drinking a pint of water between beers generally greatly improved my day after. And we didn't have any fancy mocktails or good non-alcoholic beverages, beer options at that point in time. So we went with water, and it was also cheaper, and we were broke. So yeah, that's what we did. According to a 2024 survey in the UK, 23% of UK drinkers engaged in alternating between alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks most or all of the time. The number jumps from 23 to 35% when you limit it to people under 24. So again, the kids are very well aware of the risks of alcohol here. The bars seem to be on board with the trend because it means patrons stay longer and they buy more drinks. Half of those drinks are non-alcoholic drinks or mocktails, or non-alcoholic beers or mocktails. Of course, that means patrons face the downside of spending more, time and money when they go out. But if it means they feel better the next day and still have a great time, it may not be that much of a downside. So yeah, they're spending more and feeling better. So I don't know. I mean, I don't hate this idea, but it's not a new idea. It's just we didn't have the mocktails until recently, or the quality non-alcoholic beers to mix in. So
yeah. I think again, it's something that folks have been doing it forever. I mean, as a resident old dude here, back in the day, going to the club, we'd pause and have a glass of water there. Now, I think the difference here being, it sounds like maybe this article is leaning to the fact that maybe they're getting an NA beer or a mocktail, rather than just a little H2O there. But that's something. I mean, with the recent availability of those types of beverages, I know, Brian, back during COVID, when you and I would spend our Saturdays at the studio because everything else was closed down, we'd sit at the studio and we'd drink most of the day. But we'd have a few and be like, I need to chill for a minute. We'd pop out one of the NA beers. We always had a bunch of athletic beers there at the studio, or, various ones. So we've been striping them zebras forever.
Yeah. And I think with these, I think the idea is they really do alternate one after another. Like, it's not like drink a bunch of beers and then punctuate it occasionally. Though I guess those could be wider stripes.
Okay. So a little different.
I think they're looking at really 1-to-1, kind of mixing it up. And
true zebra striping there.
Yeah, I've not done anything that intense for a while because, well, it will make you hit the bathroom a lot too, especially if you're drinking just water or something like that. But
Brian,
back in the day,
there's not going to be any difference in your bathroom visits if you're chugging beers versus if you're chugging a water. So that's
a fair point.
You know what? Come up with any excuse you need, but that one's not. I'm not letting that one fly, man.
Well, you would wind up drinking greater volumes of liquid potentially. I guess. I mean, depending on how quickly you drink the non-alcoholic option in between. Theoretically, if you paid good money for a mocktail, you would want to sip it instead. So that would be, a good thing. So yeah, I think it's a good thing that people should consider doing anyway, but I guess we have a term for it. And the big thing is I guess this one's catching on. It's like a term for a practice that didn't have a good term for it. So now people can use this, and if it catches on and gets people like drinking smarter a little bit, maybe it's a good thing,
Now, on the flip side of this coin, Brian, I think the article brushed on it a little bit. This is definitely going to have an impact on bars and breweries,
Yeah.
So now these, if they're still making NA mocktails, and those are just almost as expensive as a regular cocktail. So it's not like you're getting $3 of fruit juice there. These are still, I think I've seen like $7, $8, $9 for the mocktails to where you're 12 to 15. I've seen $20 cocktails here in the Atlanta area. And that's just crazy talk to me. So, they're still going to have sales, but right there, half price, maybe. I mean, they're not free or cheap or anything, but you're losing revenue from your alcohol. And especially a brewery, if someone's coming in and they want half of their beverages to be non-alcoholic, it will mean a continued shift in the way you operate as a brewery, brew pub, or what have you, to make sure to cater to that. And Brian, going back, we shared a week or two ago about us going to visit Voodoo Brewing that opened here in our area, which is, they're a franchise chain, I think, but it's something that they had a pretty good selection of non-alcoholic beers, and they weren't theirs. The owner there liked Untitled Arts offerings, so that's what he had on there. But they also had several mocktails as well. So they brewed their own beer, they did cocktails, mocktails, and had the NA offerings there. So again, that's a brew pub brewing their own beer, but they had a pretty extensive menu as well. So really a place to, hang out and have something to, eat and drink. And with all those options, they can appeal to anybody.
Yeah, if you really stuck to this zebra striping thing, I'm thinking instead of like staying longer and paying more, you might end up not paying as much, because honestly, after you go through, if you went through 4 or 5, 6 pints and half of them were non-alcoholic, you're gonna be satisfied. I think that,
and sober enough to make better financial decisions.
Exactly. At the end of it, you're like, I'm feeling fine. If I have any more than this, I probably have an issue. And I'm satisfied. I'm very satisfied. I'm very full of liquid at this point.
Full of liquid.
Yeah. I think this could be a good thing. I don't have a problem with it. I think the name is silly, and as long as the current generation isn't trying to claim this is something they invented, I have no issue with it. So carry on, people. Zebra stripe away.
And again, I'm talking about this, trying to see the silver lining and how it impacts the breweries and that, but I'd be all good with going back to the days where everybody was just excited about craft beer and, packing your local brewery out, excited for the next release and all that. Come back 2014. We miss you.
Oh, yeah.
That was a decade ago, Brian.
2014, 2015, even 2016. Yeah, it was still huge growth back then.
Yeah.
So,
it was good times, man. Good times. So, Brian, a very appropriate dry January article and a pairing that is definitely not zebra striping. Yes. We've got a little advice on pairing whiskey and beer.
I think this is the opposite of zebra. I don't know if it's like two shades of darkness instead of light and dark together. I don't know. But this week I came across an article about pairing whiskey with beer on the Tasting Table website. And with the temperatures dropping like a rock, it just seems like kismet here. It is Boilermaker season, folks. You need to warm up. The general strategy that these pairings use is matching complementing the beer and whiskey flavor profiles, as opposed to looking for contrast between the two. But you could do that as well. But I just don't have those kinds of pairings. Here are the recommendations I saw in the article, and I did a little Googling and supplemented with some of the stuff I found on my own. So lighter, crisp lagers pair well with lighter, approachable wheated bourbons or even Irish whiskeys. So you think like Maker's Mark or like a Jameson or a Bushmills or the like. That's going to go well with most of your lagers. I think that's a pretty classic combination. In Philadelphia, they have something called the Citywide Special, which is a pairing of Jim Beam and Pabst Blue Ribbon, and that is apparently extremely popular. I've never tried it. I've heard about it several times. Almost every time I look up a Boilermaker online to see ideas, that comes up. So I need to try that at some point in time. Now, when it comes to IPAs, try pairing rye whiskey with your IPA. You may need to do a little experimentation here, because IPAs, vary considerably in terms of flavor and body and bitterness. So you might consider spicier ryes with your West Coast IPA, maybe something like Rittenhouse Rye or Whistle Pig. With your like softer, hazy New England IPAs, you might look into something like High West Double Rye, which I've had a lot of, and it tastes like rye candy to me. So I think those two would play together really nicely. Redemption Rye was another one the article recommended. So I don't know that one as well, but I know that one's really popular. So give that a shot. if you're going into stouts, you want to go, deeper and darker with your whiskeys here. You're looking for whiskeys with chocolate, coffee, vanilla, or other like deeper dessert-like undertones. But stouts, again, have a lot of range too, so your mileage may vary. You may need to do some experimentation here. Some whiskey pairing examples you might consider with stouts include Woodford Reserve Double Oaked, Old Forester 1910, Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel. Anything like extra toasted, extra charred is going to give you, I think, some more of those vanillin or like vanilla-rich characters that'll do well with a stout. And Maker's Mark cask strength seems to pop up when I do any kind of searching for pairings or looking for bourbons with those tones. Yes, Tim.
I just invented one right now, Brian. Booker's and Black Tuesday, and you can call it
nice.
And you can call it the Blackout.
Oh, great! It's a great idea. Somebody do that and let us know how it goes.
And actually, that sounds a little extreme, but I actually think that would be a really nice combination.
I'm not opposed to that idea. I think I actually have both of those too. I may have to try that.
You don't need to crack a Black Tuesday solo on a Wednesday, Brian.
Probably not. I mean, I don't need to, but I might. But
where's your warning? You need a warning on that bottle.
I know. I really do. I need a warning. Yeah. Very large one. And because Guinness is so popular right now, everybody's splitting a G and everything like that. And it's very different from a lot of other stouts in the market. It's a dry Irish stout. I asked Google for a few whiskey pairing recommendations specifically for it, and Jameson obviously came up as one of the results. That's predictable, but Bullet Bourbon was highly recommended as well, and I think that actually came from I want to say a national sales representative for Guinness. They said that, like, you know what, Bullet Bourbon, you need to do that. Those two to go together. I've never tried that. I want to try that, and I'll get around to it at some point. I don't think I actually have Bullet, but I've had it in the past. Pretty good. I was reminded that years ago, Jameson introduced a line of whiskey called Cask Mates. I don't know if you guys remember that. I think we had a bottle in the studio. They're basically Irish whiskeys finished in craft beer barrels. And there's an IPA edition and there's a stout edition. I haven't tried it myself, but I would assume that those would pair well with their associated beer styles. So I think I somewhere have the stout edition, I think. And If I find that, I'm definitely going to try a stout and stout cask makers edition.
A stout. See how that goes. We have a couple beer schnapps that have been made from local beers, and we should get the beers that they were schnapped from and see how those pair together.
That's a really, really good idea. One of them
that'll be fun.
Was one of them Three Taverns? I think the two I'm thinking about
did a Helm's Deep.
A Helm's Deep. We need to open up a Helm's Deep and have a chaser of the beer schnapps to go with it. So I was looking into like Boilermakers and how you do it. And I guess the traditional way is that you shoot the whiskey first and then sip on the beer. I have always personally liked sipping a little bit on the whiskey and then drinking some of the beer and sipping again on it. So you get that interaction multiple times. So maximize.
You're supposed to like just shoot your whiskey and go. Okay. What's the one where you drop it in the beer? Is that also sometimes
called a Boilermaker. If you actually drop the glass in, I think it's called a depth charge. But if you pour it in, it's kind of another version of the Boilermaker. I think the traditional way is to just shoot the whiskey and then sip the beer. But
some Boilermaker flankers there, huh?
Exactly. Yes.
Interesting.
Some alternate strategies or flankers.
That's right.
We can go either way. Yeah.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Well, Brian, before we move on, how about we give a shout out to our amazing sponsor, Truck and Tap?
Yeah. Let's do that. Let me get down to the festivities of the holidays may be fading fast in the rearview mirror, but that doesn't mean you have to be bored this winter. Your local Truck and Tap has a calendar chock full of events like bingo, karaoke, live music, trivia, and even football. Yeah, you can watch football at Truck and Tap. Not to mention a generous tap list of the finest craft beer around. I challenge you to even try being bored at Truck and Tap. Do it. Go there. Try to be bored at Truck and Tap. See how it goes. And if you succeed in being bored, let me know. But speaking of beer, let's get into my Truck and Tap beer picks for the week. At Truck and Tap Woodstock, I'm going with Untitled Arts Dark Chocolate Truffle. It's a rich, boozy pastry stout with cocoa and roasty notes. It's the kind of beer I need on these ridiculously cold days we're having lately. I think it's at least 10% ABV. So that seems right. At the Duluth location, I'm going to surprise you. I'm getting a pour of Genesee Cream Ale. That's right. Genesee Cream is on tap. And if you've listened to the show for any period of time, you know that we have a lot of love for Jenny Cream, especially Tim. Honestly, Tim introduced all of us to it, really. And I can't pass it up. Like, I love seeing it on the Truck and Tap list. So I'm like, well, obviously, I got to get that. At Truck and Tap Alpharetta, my pick is Wrecking Bar's Beta Todd, which is a bright and floral German lager made with 100% Weyermann malt. It sounds really refreshing, and I suspect it's a loving jab at Todd from Good Word, so I would probably get it for that reason alone. And finally, at the Lawrenceville location, I'm going with Six Bridges Perihelion Quanta IPA. It's a hazy double IPA with Dynaboost Citra, Nelson Sauvin, and Motueka hops. This beer had me at Dynaboost Citra. I don't actually even know what that is, but it sounds intense, like it would blow the hair to the back of my head or something like that. No, I'm lying. Actually, I do. I looked it up. It's an oil-enriched hop extract, which just makes me want to have it even more. So, yeah, it's super fancy. As always, a complete list of events, food trucks, and the tap list can be found at truckandtap.com if you'd like to check it out before you head out, but you don't really have to. You're going to have a fun time if you just swing by. And I suggest you do just swing by your local Truck and Tap and tell them that the beer guy sent you. And thank you to Truck and Tap for your support.
Thanks, Truck and Tap. You're the best. We appreciate it. Well, Brian, this seems like it's been going on forever. And I guess that it's been finalized. But the Stone versus Molson Coors thing, big stuff there. So what in the world happened there with the judgment?
I know, it's crazy. I saw this pop up in news feeds, and I'm like, oh, wait, this is not done yet? I think it's news. I think it's the final chapter of a story we've been following for 7 freaking years at this point in time. I'm talking, it's the Stone versus Molson Coors lawsuit. This week we learned the federal appeals panel has upheld the $56 million judgment plus interest in favor of Stone Brewing. The case was about Molson Coors infringing on Stone's trademark with their old Keystone Light cans. I don't know if you remember seeing pictures of those. I do. You know, it seemed like every year
just said Stone. I mean, Stone, the way they had it worded, it looks like it just said Stone on there.
Exactly. Yeah. It emphasized the Stone part to the point where you couldn't even see the key part, and it would lead to customer confusion, very likely. Stone successfully argued that customers were confused as to the origin of Keystone Light, and that, quote, the negative attributes of Keystone Light were transferred to Stone, unquote, resulting in lost sales and damage to brand reputation, et cetera, et cetera. So it looks like Molson Coors is actually going to have to pony up on this. And I mean,
that's a lot of ponying.
Yeah. It's going to wind up in Sapporo's pockets now. And it's not really going to help the brewery out at all. But, whatever.
I like the jab there in very legalese terms when they're like, well, the negative attributes of Keystone were transferred to Stone. I'm like, oh, burn.
I know. That's just brutal.
Burn, Molson Coors.
Yeah, I made a point of saying that's a quote. I'm not saying it. I mean, I don't personally have anything against Keystone Light. So
crazy. Yeah, you know what? I haven't had enough of that one to have an opinion one way or the other. I know it's a cheap beer. I know that is their market, is we're a cheap beer. I forget some of the other ones that were kind of had that reputation, but I know Keystone is one that is, it's below your Bud Lights, Miller Lights, Coors Lights, and
it's the one with the whole campaign was the bitter beer face, right?
That was a bitter beer face, yeah. And then they had Keith Stone. Do you remember the Keith Stone commercial?
You brought this up last time, and I still don't remember. I don't know if I ever saw that one.
You have to hit YouTube and find some of those Keith Stone commercials.
They did do the collaboration with Fish Wife, right?
They did. I have
the sardine ones.
I have my snackle box over there that I turned into a first aid kit. So
I still have one of the tins that came with the snackle box.
Okay.
And I was hanging on to it, and I have not opened it yet. I did finally find, man, it is really tough to find Keystone Light now. I found a can of Keystone Light. Okay. At some point in time, I'm going to eat whatever that tin is, and I'm going to have it with that Keystone, just because that was kind of the whole gist of the thing. I mean, it's been a year and a half at this point. So
did you get the snackle box kit as well?
I did, yeah. I got that.
Okay, so you can have your beer and set it that you can. That's an excellent Twitter photo op for you, Brian.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm like, will anybody remember like that thing? Like that happened like 2 years ago. I'm like, it took me 9 months or a year or more to even find a Keystone Light can. I looked around and I just never saw it anywhere. I happened to see it, I think, in a convenience store. I'm like, well, hey, that's there, and hopefully it's not super old. And now I can finally make this pairing happen. So
yeah, I haven't been looking for it, but it's not one that I recall seeing in a long time.
I want to say it used to always be in the the domestic section of your grocery store, but that's moved out, and now they've got I've seen non-alcoholic Guinness and Athletic, where I think that's some of those lesser domestics, the lighter ones,
where the Keystone used to be,
have gotten chased out and replaced with some other interesting non-alcoholic options. So I'm not angry about it. It's just it is weird when you think something is pervasive and then you look around and like, oh no, it's not even here anymore. You're like, oh dang, okay, yeah,
slipped away. Well, Brian, some good news for the brewers. TTB, and for those that don't know, there's just a ton of approvals that you've got to go through for beer recipes and labels and all that. It's kind of I don't even think it's a thing anymore now that I think about it. Remember when terpenes in beer was a big thing?
Oh yeah,
like putting that in there and making them dank. Like what was the one that smelled up the whole room? I'm forgetting.
Oh, the Hemperor.
The Hemperor
from New Belgium, right?
Yeah.
So the R.I.P. the Hemperor.
We did a trip to Augusta and we were in a beer bar there and they had it, and that's where I got it. And seriously, when they opened it, they popped the lid and brought a glass with it when they brought it to the table. The entire bar smelled of this beer. And then, so that was kind of, one of the things with it. And then Sweetwater had their 420 strain beers that they did. But at one time, those hemp terpenes, they weren't approved to put in beer. And I remember being at a brewery that one of their anniversary celebrations, and they had to be very low key. They're like, look, we've got some special kegs we're going to tap at like 5:00. And it's like, well, what are these? They're like, we can't talk about them, this and that. But the minute they pulled the tap handle, it was obvious what they were. So,
I remember
and
that.
it's like, and it was just simply because the ingredients were not approved to be used. Not that there was anything wrong with them, but they were not approved to be used in beer at that time. Was a big deal. But all that said, Brian, there are 24 common brewing ingredients that are going to be exempted by the TTB.
That is correct. And that's the Sweetwater, the terpene beers. They still have 2 of them that are out there in markets, and one of them is even a long beer now. But anyway, I'll get to this. Yeah. So the TTB has announced that they are exempting those 24 brewing ingredients from formula submission approval requirements. So what exactly does that mean? It means that using these ingredients will no longer require you to resubmit your beer recipe for approval to the TTB. So if you add, bananas and pistachios to your stout, you will no longer need to resubmit that recipe to the TTB for approval, assuming the original recipe was approved. So it's not carte blanche to use those. It's only if you've already got an approved recipe and you're adding these. It's also important to note that banana, for example, is not considered the same thing as a banana flavored extract. The former banana is exempt and the latter is not. And I've got the complete list of the newly exempt ingredients, and a big thank you to Brewbound for summarizing this so nicely for me. So here goes. Almonds, bananas, beets, cantaloupes, carrots, cucumbers, dandelion leaves and greens, dill, dragon fruit, elderberries, guava, hazelnuts, lavender, lychee fruit, I don't know how you do that. Papaya, peanuts, pecans, pistachios, prickly pear fruits, rhubarb, rosehip, spruce, love spruce tips, tea, walnuts, and that's it. That's a pretty good list. I couldn't think of anything.
Quite a list.
I couldn't think of anything that's missing there. Is there anything you guys think should be like blueberries maybe or something like that?
So here's the thing. I don't know of any that may already be exempt.
Possible, yeah.
So there may be some, like I was thinking like chocolate, but I'm guessing if it's not part of this list, that it's probably already one that's there. And again, there could be some crazy rule that we just don't know about that that makes it not exempt, but possibly that would be one. If it's not already exempt, Brian, that I'd say chocolate is probably one.
Probably. I think the things that are commonly used in cooking, like your cinnamon, your vanilla, I would guess chocolate.
I don't know. All of these are I mean, there's actually a couple I thought that maybe they, because you got like almonds, like the nuts in there. People have nut allergies. So
that's true. Yeah,
it surprises me that they allow them to do
peanuts
it without
and
really
almonds
approval.
both. Yeah,
but who knows, man?
And,
I know we all trust that the TTB knows what they're doing and operates in the best interest of the brewers.
Yes, I'm sure that's what that is. Yeah, there's a few things in here like lavender. I'm like I'm aware of that as like something you'd put an essential oil in or fragrance, but like a drinking lavender, that's only newly become a thing that I was aware you could even do. I wasn't sure you could drink that or consume.
Well, we did a vanilla lavender mead, Brian.
Oh, that's true. I guess that has been a few years. So I became aware of it maybe a decade ago that you could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Brian's like, I didn't even know. Not even when I actually brewed a drink.
Not when I made it and drank it and apparently didn't die. So
and it was actually very good. Vanilla lavender mead was very tasty. As you might expect, delicate,
Yes. That one was good to start off with. And that was, I think it had to do a lot with our recipe, but as it sat, that got amazing. Like aged mead is fantastic, at least the kinds that I've had. So that's
cause ours is like 20% sugar. You can just drop a stick in there, it'll stand up there. So
pretty much
ours was quite sweet. I need to dig around to see if I have any bottles of that left, because it's something that we learned you drink, like, what do they call it, an aperitif or something like that?
Yeah.
You get like a shot glass worth. Chill you a shot glass and get you a little after dinner pour. And this isn't something you get a 6, 8, 10 ounce pour of.
You drink it like you would drink a port out of a coffee mug.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good.
Not out of a coffee mug. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we do have a buddy though that's kind of his thing. He'll sit down and drink his port out of a coffee mug. Brian, I don't know if it's because we talked about this article like off air, but did we talk about the diets, the wine versus beer drinker diets on the show? Brian, do you?
I don't think we got into it.
Okay, I think it may have just been that we talked about it a good bit off the air. Made me think about it. But Brian, a study, and with so much stuff comes from a study.
Yes.
It is said that beer drinkers have worse diets than wine drinkers.
That is true, apparently. Yes, worse diets than people who drink wine or spirits. So researchers compare the diets of more than 1,900 U.S. alcohol drinkers. I guess they could have said approximately 2,000, but 38.9% consumed only beer. 21.8% of these people drank only wine, 18.2% drank only liquor, and 21% drank a combination of the preceding three categories. None of the groups came close to achieving the 80-point score that is considered an adequate diet on the Healthy Eating Index, which is a U.S. measure of diet quality. So take that, wine drinkers. You think you're better than us? You're still bad at eating.
You still suck.
That's right. You still suck. So wine drinkers did score highest. They got a 55 on that score scale. So that 80's what you're shooting for. They got 55. Liquor only and combination drinkers scored a 53, and beer drinkers posted the lowest score of 49. Beer only drinkers are more likely to be male, younger, smokers, and low income, according to the study. And editorializing again a little bit based on that alone, I'm going to say that demographics have more of a direct connection to bad diets than the consumption of beer here. When I was young and broke, I wasn't out there buying good bottles of wine and scotch, and I definitely wasn't paying for quality food. So I think if you're broke and just getting by, I think you're probably drinking beer because
you're eating those ramen,
accessible.
Man. You're drinking a Keystone Light and having a pack of ramen.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. And get your Marlboro Reds, your
live your life,
and your ramen. Yeah, you're living high on the hog right there.
You know what though? Interesting. I don't know the score or the scale, but if 80 points is adequate,
yes,
wine drinkers were at 55 and beer drinkers at a 49. That's not a massive gap there.
No, not too. It's not too bad
though.
Both bad at eating. Like you're both not eating well, but the beer drinkers are definitely eating less well.
So here, you know what? I'd really like to see the breakdown. And so much of these articles, I have so many other questions on there because, like, for example, the wine drinkers are these guys sitting around hosing a cheese plate? Because technically a charcuterie board is not really a healthy option.
That's a really good point.
And it would be probably not as unhealthy, but if our boy there with these Keystone Lights and his Marlboro Reds is eating a Big Mac combo meal with the dessert of his charcuterie board is like Vienna sausage and Kraft singles. Now, on a good day, it's Kraft singles.
Sounds great.
So, right. Count me in.
Let me get on that.
Saltines there. So that could also be it. It's like maybe the wine drinkers are eating good food in the fact that it's quality, enjoyable, but maybe not nutritious.
I think that's very likely the case. They're favoring like the most interesting flavors and combinations that you on those boards you'll frequently get these like high sugar jams, but they're like really amazing fruits in them, and you said, the cheese like fatty and all that.
Now I want a charcuterie board.
Yeah. That reminds me, somebody in my day job was talking about a holiday party they went to where everybody brought a charcuterie board, but they were all color themed. So you had to come up with a color themed charcuterie board. I'm like, that sounds like one of the greatest get-togethers ever. I'm like, nothing but various cut meats, cheeses, and probably pickled vegetables and jams and toasts, and they're all like color coordinated. So you'd have all of like that. I don't know why, but that tickles me.
I'd mix it up.
I want to be in on that. Yeah.
I'd be the guy because I don't think anybody else would do it. I do the seacouterie board, Brian. I'd bring all the tins of 10 seafoods and conservas and stuff and like that. And, some pickled olives, some peppers, some stuff like that. Not everybody would dig it, but some folks would dig that.
So your color theme would be kind of the darker blues, silvers.
I guess so.
And like,
did it have to be the food, or do you have to like decorate it to the color?
I thought it was. You know what? I didn't read into it too much. I thought it was you were looking for a theme with the food itself.
Okay, because if you're talking meats and cheeses on a charcuterie board, then there's not a whole lot of color palette there.
I think you can. I think you start getting into pickled vegetables and different types of toasts and different types of breads. I want to see
this executed, Brian. Yeah, I am intrigued. Intrigued.
I love the idea. I don't know how well people actually did it because again, it was kind of like a potluck type of thing. So who knows what people actually put together? They may have gone with these are mostly on the green or the red or the purple
close
side.
Enough side.
Like it's close enough. Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. See, now I want. I shared a video with you guys the other day in raclette. I know we all know raclette, but if you don't know raclette, it's the traditional way is it's a big wheel of cheese like the size of like a Parmesan wheel, and they cut it in half down the middle, and you take the cheese and put it under a broiler and melt that top layer, and then you'll have a variety of things. But like a traditional way is you'd have a plate with some roasted or boiled potatoes and some pickles and stuff like that. You melt the cheese on it, but that would it would go good with wine or beer, whatever you want to do there.
I had raclette at the little German Christmas
Village or whatever.
Yeah, they did it in like a sandwich form, but you would have there was a salami version and there was a ham version, and it turned out I think the ham version wound up being the better of the two. So it was like ham, potatoes, and I think some pickled onions, and they would they had these little things just like you showed in the video where they had the half wheel under the broiler and it's slightly blackened on top, and they just slide off. Oh
good
man,
stuff, man!
That was so good.
Good stuff.
Completely lactose free, it turns out too, Tim.
Yeah. That's what is this lactose free? They're like, sure.
Yeah. When you're done eating it, it'll be lactose free. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, y'all, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. If you enjoy what we're doing here, we would love it if you would tell a friend, pass the show along, ask them to listen. If you really dig what we're doing, then come join us on Patreon. You'll get cool perks. We'll get you into our Discord chat, and you'll get invited to the after party to have some beers and conversations on camera with us. And isn't that cool? But we appreciate you, again, hanging out with us. We hope that you all have a very good week. And don't forget to drink local. Cheers.